Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOMO, a year of mature learning. If you're new to the show, hello. And if you are, returning, hello again. And we are glad you came back to see us. So today we're on book 121. We want to talk about, the body and how it, keeps the score. So basically it's a book by Bessel
Oh,
van
you want to try?
der Kolk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Bessel,
you
Bessel,
try
Bessel
it.
and
You
Pepper.
try it.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Uh,
try it. Yeah.
yeah. So no, this is an interesting body. This is a book. This is actually one that
Mhm.
my therapist recommended to me a long time ago. It's called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and the Body and the Healing of Trauma by the author Bessel. This is a really interesting book, honestly. It talks a lot about like veterans and PTSD and their families and dealing with, the painful aftermath of combat. It talks about alcoholics, talks about people with sexual abuse and assault, and it talks about all different kinds of ranges of people that have
Mhm.
experienced trauma in their life. And then he explores like how it affects your body and how it affects your mind and how it affects people that have post-traumatic stress. Basically, the reason why the book is called The Body Keeps the Score is it's literally like your body remembers like how you felt in specific moments, times, and places, and it gets embedded in you, and it's like just a part of your being eventually at a certain point in
Mhm.
time, and it literally keeps the score, kind of thing. It knows what it
It,
felt like, and it remembers whether you remember or you don't remember. Like the body always remembers, kind of thing. So it was an interesting book. I actually would, if you're curious to learn more about trauma or anything like that in your life, like how it might impact you or might impact people around you or loved ones, or just curious to learn more about how the body processes trauma in general and your mind
mhm.
processes trauma, like check the book out. I thought it was really good. Thought there was some really insightful comments for me personally. Like, it resonated immensely just because of the trauma that my family's gone through over the past few years. And I could very much so resonate with pretty much everything that was being talked about. The irony for me is my treatment was this stuff, right? Like, was learning, was our values, discovering my own curiosity again, my own, using our imagination, ideating with you every night, coming up with this other stuff, doing a year of magical learning, like sharing these thoughts and reflections with people, writing a book, writing another book, I mean, it was like, this was how I processed through a lot of this stuff. And it talks a lot about like, this is, treatments. Like I didn't mean, I wasn't looking for a treatment to my trauma. It was just being driven by my daughter and what I felt compelled to do. In a weird way, here we are, right? Like I, have we've been processing this trauma. So anyway, it's an interesting book. Any thoughts? I don't think you've read this one, have you?
I've heard a lot about it from you, but I have not read it.
Yeah, so I think the author actually has a little bit of controversy around him. I don't know. I looked him up afterwards. I feel like there were some people that are, but all I know is this book is pretty widely recognized as a really,
Hmm.
this guy is like his, researcher that does this stuff every single day and has a facility that he's the head of this facility. Anyway, so I guess he knows his stuff, for the most part. As Nassim Taleb would say, he has, like this is a part of his life, and he spent his life, you know, in the weeds with this stuff. Like this is what he was seeing from observations of from a clinical
Right.
aspect. So anyway, on to the reflection. The reflection title for this one is Trauma is an Imagination Thief. So reclaim your superpower. So just a quick recap. I think you'll enjoy this. Some of our learnings we've had pertains
Hmm.
to humans and imagination thus far in our journey. Number one, from Sapiens, our imagination is our superpower. We've already gone through that one. That was the first reflection from Sapiens. Infinite possibilities, thoughts become things. So if we can dream it, we can bring it into reality, into this world, right? Moonwalking with Einstein, we just did this one recently. So if you want to
Hmm.
create new memories that stick, use your imagination, right? Because the best memory
Right.
athletes in the world are essentially the most creative and imaginative people because we
Right.
think in stories, we think in visuals, we think in not words or numbers. This is how we remember, is we remember in stories.
Hmm.
And and from Why We Sleep, the term sleep on it, right? Because like when you're sleeping on it, you actually learn something new and you go into that REM sleep. That's when your brain is rewiring everything. It's, I know you know this, but like that's when our imagination is like in hyperdrive, right? That's when we see these vivid dreams and everything
Hmm.
when our body shuts down, feels safe, and all that good stuff. That's when new memories are cemented in your mind a lot of times during sleep. What does all this have to do with trauma and the body keeps the score? So here's my
Hmm.
personal theory after reading this book, and this is the thought that this book generated in my own head. My theory is that trauma is the death of your imagination. Here's why. Just going off of my own lived experience with trauma and going through what we went through with my daughter, having her be born at 22 weeks and 6 days old, weighing only 1 pound, being thrown into the NICU fire and life and death every single day, to losing our daughter, to watching her take her last breath, to having to make the call to end my daughter's life, to then finding ourselves back in the NICU, only a few months later for another 92 days with our son, being born early as well, but also getting home. But it was still traumatic, right? Like, I mean, it was re-traumatizing because it was only a few months later, right? Like 11 months after she had passed away. So for me, the reason why I'm bringing this up, just as a reminder, like, I vividly remember how I felt the days, weeks, and months after Amelia passed away. I wrote a lot about it in the book. I can't imagine, it sucked. Like, I mean, I can tell you every single thing in my being was, I could be sitting at a table with my family or close friends. I could be reading a book. I could be, going on a run. I could be doing whatever I was doing. It didn't matter. Like, my brain and my memories and my thoughts were on April 22nd, 2020, the day that my daughter died. It might look like I was present with somebody, and it might look like I was thinking about what was going on. Trust me, every thought for a really long period of time was wrapped up on that day. The way that in understanding this book now, trauma, you just relive the same memory over and over and over and over again, right? Like, you're really stuck in a place where you're never creating new memories anymore. So this is where it made me start to think, as I was kind of reflecting after I learned more about this book, trauma stops you from creating new memories. And so if we're going to go back and talk about all the other stuff that we've learned from the year of magical learning so far, imagination is our superpower, and we can literally create new memories by thinking in vivid stories and pictures. When trauma is affecting you and you're living in it, you stop creating memories. So what's the antidote to that? Use your imagination and create new memories, right? So how do you do that? That's the big question, right? So maybe that's the truth. So that's why I called trauma like an imagination thief. It just wants to steal your imagination from you. It wants to just take all of your ability to go create those new memories and those new pictures in your head and the new questions and things like that. And it's just like, nope, you're going to go right back here to, this is what we know and this is what we care about. And you're going to stew in this moment. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm sure there's some deep-seated thing where I had to go figure that thing out. Otherwise, like, my body would have probably just kept the score for the rest of my life and been, in pain, feeling that, but not processing through it. So maybe trauma's not a bad thing. Nobody wants it, but I'm sure there's some functionality and purpose to everything, right? As we talked about on this journey. But that doesn't change the fact that it's still a happy, healthy, functioning human being is when we're using our imagination and creating new memories and being creative out there. So that's when you deploy your magical learning. Fill your head with new ideas, fill your head with new thoughts, fill your head with new people, with new questions, with new whatever. And slowly but surely over time, I promise you, like, I mean, if you're ever going through trauma or anything like that in your life, I promise you, your imagination will start to come back. I promise you, those questions, the curiosity will start to come back. And then once that happens, then you're creating all new memories. The trauma doesn't hurt as bad anymore. It's not that the trauma doesn't still exist in my life, and I don't know what happened. I still know how that felt, but it doesn't affect me going forward in terms of creating new memory and using my imagination and using my superpowers that we have as humans to keep living a life of purpose, right? So that was the reflection from this book. I know it's kind of a unique one, but yeah, I'll pause there. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said. I read the book, and even though I don't have the first-hand experience that you have, the memories of the book that I've read, it's still with me today. I can recall the image of you holding baby Amelia against your chest and deciding to taking her off of the machine. And to me, that's, even reading it, it has carved a deep hole in my mind. And that is so vivid, even as an outsider looking in, it leaves you a very, very deep impression. And so I can't even imagine how deep that impression would be on your mind. And so for me, when I think about, because I always like to compare how our brains work with the flow of the water down the mountain, right? When the water flow down the mountain, it's going to pick random path. But as more of the water droplets, kind of follow the path, it start to carve into the earth, like the rock, the path, the curve and the sway of the river. I mean, and that's how a river is created. Essentially, like a lot of rain comes down, and essentially one of these days, the more drops of rain goes in one path, and eventually it carves that little channel that we now call a river. And so for us, it's the same thing in terms of reinforced learning. The more we do something, the more we are better at it because we have the same mechanism to build that connection or build that channel from
Right.
one endpoint to the next endpoint. For me, in the analogy of the drama, it's like you going down the path on a river and suddenly there's a deep drop, right? In a hole. Imagine it's not water, but it's a deep drop in a hole where you can't get out. And to me, drama in my mind represent a trap that you basically trap inside a deep well, right? It's so deep that you can't get out, and all you can think about is whatever that you're surrounded by the drama. You can't see anything else. The only thing you can see is drama, right? The only thing you can see is your atomic bomb. And for me, that's how I'm thinking as you were talking about your reflection is you suddenly walk down this path where a lot of people have gone before, and suddenly the earth basically collapses like a sinkhole. It collapses and goes down. And that's to me represents drama. And once you're inside that drama, right? The only thing you can think about is that piece. What else can you see?
Nothing. I mean, it's literally, that's all you can see. That's all you dream about. That's all that you question about. That's all. I mean, that's it. I know that I'm not alone in saying this. I'm not going to speak for every person that's ever had trauma because trauma is different in every single person, right? And it manifests itself differently. But the one thing that I do know is whatever that trauma was, like you're stuck in that moment. It imprisons you. Like, yeah, exactly. You're stuck in that moment. I really love your analogy. I would tweak it just a little bit, actually, though. I would say instead of the sinkhole dropping down, if we think of like water cascading down a mountain and it's curving out your river and all that good stuff, I feel like we could call that water curiosity, imagination, creativity, questions. That's what the water is to me, right? Like as long as that's going on, like there's always a trickle going down and it will carve a new path and it'll keep going, right? I feel like it's more like somebody just turned the tap off on the water. Like, I mean, like you had a channel going and then all of a sudden the water just doesn't exist anymore. Like there's just no more. I do love your analogy of it just dropping straight down.
But the thing is you get stuck. The point is you get stuck at that moment.
Yes.
Right. And it may not be a perfect analogy, but because I'm trying to use the analogy I used before with how the brain works with the river, you basically entrenching the connection between the two. And if you use that analogy, it's basically for whatever reason at that moment in the trauma event moment, you get stuck there, you get imprisoned there. And so you're going to sit there for hours on end and for days, for months, and sometimes years, sometimes your whole life. You see like dramas and like and I agree with you, people handle drama differently and people experience drama differently. So the outcome is going to be greatly vary from one person to the next.
Right.
Some people never climb out of that hole or never get unstuck. It's just because the only thing they see is their drama. The only thing that is in their mind is the image of the same. I wouldn't call that a dream, but it's like a nightmare because you don't want that image. The responsibility to take your daughter off of the lifeline. For me, if you think about it, it's so vivid and it's so hard in terms of how you cope with that image, even as an observer. That is how deep these dramas are, these trauma are, right? These trauma are so deep that it's hard to get out without help.
I agree.
Imagine you in a canoe down the river and suddenly all the water turns off. Why that canoe gets stuck? It doesn't move because there's no water. It doesn't flow, so there's no water, so you get stuck. So the only way for you to get out is you have to continue to let your imagination run again. Right? Exactly. You turn tap on, and when imagination runs again, the canoe or whatever is going to
slowly lifts up. It doesn't happen overnight, like and then it gets unstuck, and then you're back on your life path and your purpose, and and like that's when trauma no longer the body doesn't hold on you. Exactly. That's when trauma. I like the title "The Body Keeps Score," but I don't think that that's forever. Like my body does not feel this trauma anymore, and I can say that like somebody could be like, well, he doesn't know.
I think it does.
No, it does.
I mean, the body keeps score is that the carving of the water is still there, but the imaginations and the creativity you bring is the level of the water. It raised above the threshold for you to move along.
Correct.
Deep
Yeah.
under the water,
It still exists, for
carving
sure.
and the trench still exists. So the body
For
still
sure.
keeps score. So it records everything. It's just that you have to have something stronger than it, much more powerful than it, to overcome its hold on you.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, like, this trauma will never leave me. I'd say this all the time. Like, that is the why. Like, whenever I don't want to do something, I think about, what would Amelia do, and I remember everything that she went through and everything that we went through together, and I'm like, look, if she can do that, I could do anything. You know what I mean? Like, get your shit together, get up, and get to work. Get to work, live in your purpose, like, whatever that may be. And that's only used for me. Like, that's how the trauma impacts my life these days, versus, but to your point, like, you're dead on. Like, I'm now floating above it now, and my stream has resumed carving out new memories and things like that.
And you can paddle and navigate to the directions and core values that you want.
Exactly.
This is important. It's not for everybody, but the lessons here is that if you happens to be in that rut, in the dramatic prison, right? This is one of the solutions that will get you out of it.
I don't know that there's another solution. I mean, in all seriousness, I don't know how else you overcome being stuck in a moment and stuck, like, to your analogy. I think it's a great analogy.
I mean, a lot of people commit suicide.
Sorry, I guess there's
technicality.
Yeah, right. I think your analogy is so spot on, though, because, like, even I think everybody has trauma. Like, no matter if it's like some crazy bad trauma or some light trauma, you got fired from the job, it's still trauma. Or you have, your kid went to the hospital the other day or something like that. Colleague that her daughter had spinal surgery. You're back,
like a curved spine.
Yeah, like a curve, like, yeah, whatever that is. And she had to have this correction. And, like, that was probably traumatic. Where she had a very intense surgery, and then she had recovery where she had to do all this stuff for like 6 weeks. But anyway, she's not going to forget that, and she's not going to forget what it felt like, to go through these things. Anyway, her whole life had to change, like, and that's traumatic. Everybody has different degrees of trauma. But I love your analogy of that sinkhole, I guess, if you will, of what your canoe falls into. It could either be just below the surface, and then you just need a little bit of, and the tap turns off, and you just need a little bit more water to get you back up to floating and moving on. Or you fall way deep, and then you need a lot of to be able to get you back to the life course and purpose path that you need to be on. So and to fill up that reservoir,
it takes more imagination,
creativity.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's questions, it's learning new things, it's all the stuff that we talk about, but, like, that is the tap that kind of turns on here.
Right. And this is one of an answer that is suitable for people in a similar situation. I can't say this is the only, because I don't know shit and you don't know shit. So we know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. It could be 99.99%. We don't know what we don't know. So, but this is like a good solution for kind of getting out of this tricky hold of the drama. Because drama, to me, is powerful. It could drown you.
Yeah.
Right. Or it could make you stronger. It depends on how you solve your own dilemma.
I totally agree. Even if you don't have trauma, though, that's the beauty of this whole journey that we're on. We talk about this all the time. You can still do these things and still fill your river, like, higher and higher, and carve out better life paths without having to maybe necessarily go down into an atomic bomb pit. You know what I mean? That's left by some crater. So, like, you could still do all these things, and you could still get the benefits of being more curious, creative, playing, embracing your inner humanity and all the other rules that we're learning and all the other lessons that we're learning across this whole entire journey. So I want to make sure that, we all note that this isn't just apply to trauma, but certainly trauma is a unique situation where it's like, look, the tap is off. Like, you have to go restart your tap, otherwise you're going to be going nowhere. What do you think the purpose of trauma is? Like, what do you think the purpose of everything has a purpose, right? Like, what do you think the purpose of trauma is?
The purpose of drama is, for me, it's for the body to tell you, hey, don't do that ever again. Just like you put your hand in a hot stove, it hurts you so much that you would never, even for a second or a fraction of a second, forget. I will only put my hand on a hot stove once in my life. You think about it. It is a way for your body to tell you, this is dangerous. And
Right.
it is so dangerous that I'm going to pound this into your head. I'm going to carve a deep scar into your brain that this thing, right? You don't do that. And you need to remember it, even with a slight trigger of will remind you of the experience. So because, for example, for any of these atomic bomb, it's one of those things where you're on the verge of death. You're on the verge. I mean, you are close, and your body is trying to keep you away from the edge, and so it has to beat you into that. It carved the deep scar into your brain for you
It's
to make
gotta
sure
beat
that
your
it
elephant
never.
over the head. Like
Yes.
it's gotta just maim your elephant, basically, where where
Mhm.
everybody can see the scar forever and ever, and say like,
The scars
yeah,
and like even like slight trigger reminders would triggers the memory of that. And because like these images, imagination you have for these drama, they're so vivid. Why are they so vivid? Because they get copied over and over and over again. And even after that, the brain makes you remember the images and kind of sears the images into your eyeball. And so you never forget. Like
well, it's not, you don't forget all the senses. You don't forget the 5 4 3 2 1 that I just learned in the how to
right.
think like a monk. It's the 5 things that you see, the 4 things that you can touch, the 3 things that you can hear, the 2 things that you can smell, and the 1 thing you can taste. Like I literally, I will never forget. Like you asked me to do that right now. There's not too many memories in my life that I could do that for. With everything with Amelia, like I could
It's
do
like
that
a
in
it's like a Moran, the trench in the ocean.
right.
Those
Yeah,
are
the
the
Mariana
memories, like a
yeah,
trench in the ocean. Yeah.
right.
It's so deep that there's nothing that compares to it, right? So when you look at it, it's gonna say, hey, how much of a water pressure do I have in this area? Well, you have a lot of water pressure just because that trench is huge.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a really interesting analogy. It's something I'm gonna probably stew on, or probably turn it
I
into a
don't know if we
truism or
can turn a
something.
truism
Yeah,
into
I
like turn into a truism.
right. Well, the visual, truisms don't just have to be words. Truisms could be pictures. Like you said with the sloths and all the
Sloth and
animals in
cheetah, right?
the class or whatever,
Right,
learning a lesson that they all should be a monkey or something like that,
right.
or a canoe floating down a river with like a
Yeah.
trickle
I want
coming.
to learn that. And like
Right.
I'm like strongly more visual than any other senses. That's why for me is, my eyes and my imaginations is my strength. But not only that, I don't have a balance of it, right? And so most of what I do is in the visual versus the other stuff. So most of what I do is always like, hey, what do I see? What do I imagine? And that's how I learn. That's how I keep my lessons that I learn from these reflections. Is what kind of image can I carve? Just like a beaver must dam. I imagine a beaver in the water with, a water coat pelt. Talking about the classroom where you have a sloth and a cheetah trying to run really slow. I mean, these kind of imagery, it guides me towards my core values and guides me in my life.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, we think in stories. I mean, this is what
We
we're
do.
learning,
We do.
and this is what we're discovering for ourselves, and it fills up our stream a little bit more every single time. It keeps you afloat, and it keeps you floating down the path toward your purpose of whatever that is. We don't know
Hey,
where we're going, but we know
to move. It allows you to
Right.
move because once
Right.
you float, you can choose the direction you want to go move towards, right? But if
If you
you
don't,
you stuck in a little crevice of rut or sinkhole
right.
or whatever you want to call it, depending on the size and degree of your trauma, right? You're not gonna be able to choose the directions of where you want to go. It's gonna keep you there until you give in or somebody else come along and help you out. And so,
100%.
it's up to you. So, can you control
Here's a question for you: can you ever fill your river up too much?
I think so.
What do you do
I
then? You just need to go take a break, or like get to. Okay, how do you strategically stop the water for a while? To just go on a pleasure cruise floating down the river.
right, because I mean we talking about the molecule of more, right? And we're
right.
talking about the molecule of now, right? So it's a balance between the two. You can't be living in these imaginations all the time. You still have to stop and smell the roses. You still have to carry that spoonful of oil walking around a
Right.
palace, right? It's the same story, it's the same lessons and concept that it keep reiterating over and over in multiple books that we read in company.
So where does
You
the water go
have
though?
to.
What happens when you get too full? Where does the water go? How do you get rid of the water?
So what happens when there's too much water? It becomes an ocean,
it
and you're in the middle, and you're in a canoe in the middle of the ocean. What do? Where do you
lost.
go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly, you lost. That's why I say you still want to see scenery. We still want to trees and animal. If the water rise so high, the whole earth is water, and you are basically a single person in a single canoe in the middle of the ocean.
So then the question or the answer then maybe just balance, right? Like you can't
Balance
imagine all
comes back to,
day.
I mean,
Can't
go back to
question all-
the alchemist,
can't,
right?
you
The
know,
alchemist say,
right.
"Hey, I want you to walk around the palace, but don't spill it."
Right.
Right.
So
So,
you still have work to do.
you
So
still
gotta
gotta enjoy the
focus.
palace and the scenery. You can't
Right.
just watch that
Right.
spoon all the time, or then you can't
Right.
watch the palace and then just forget about the spoon. You have to have balance. So balance is a lesson that has been reiterated and reaffirming among multiple books that we have come across in company. And I think that's the
Almost
core,
every
that's a
book.
core values. The top core values of company. It's about striking that balance.
Yeah, it's never going too much. Too you know, what was the book about the rain one? Too much and too little or something like that. Or anyway, I can't remember the book. The book
I
about
mean,
rain.
you have too much rain. What happened? You have too much rain.
You flood. I mean, you
Okay,
know,
what happened? You don't have too little rain.
everything dies. Like, I mean,
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't have too much and you can't have too little. It's the same lesson that's reaffirming over and over again in every single, most of these books that we've read is, there's a balance between, like the molecule of more, for example. You want to live in the future and you keep wanting more and more and more, but eventually where did it stop? So you have to have the molecule of now to come back and pull the molecule of more back a little bit and control it so that you can enjoy the here and now, enjoy the cake that you bake, right? Rather than the moment you bake the cake and then you just, your mind's somewhere else, right? You're not enjoying the companies of the people around you. You're sitting in and having conversation with somebody, but your mind is elsewhere. Your mind is, in a bowling alley or a golf course or whatever, while somebody is here is important to you. And then suddenly when you wake up one day and you're, 99 years old, in your deathbed and you wish you have more time with the daughter that you never pay attention to. And so people have that kind of experience all the time. To me, it comes down to how much regrets do you have in terms of what you did not do. It's not what you did, it's what you did not do, right?
I agree.
You want something, right? Do you even try it? I mean, even you try and you fail, you still feel proud because the experience is what counts.
Right.
I
agree.
Things, but you will regret not doing things that you want.
Agreed. So in the spirit of balance, I say this has been a delightful conversation. And I say that we
put a cover on it.
We call this one good, and we let Chris go to bed because his body hurts. Because
it's a balance.
I need some rest because my
recovery. Right?
This tennis smash today killed me. Great discussion in general. So the question we can leave with anybody tuning in here is: have you lost your superpower of imagination to drama? And if so, how can you take it back and reclaim your mind? Fill up that stream. Find a new questions to go populate in your head.
We hear the way that you try to cope with the drama that you have. Because like I said, this is one of the way I know. I just don't know that any other ways.
Right. On a serious note, trauma sucks. Now, I know if you're living in that world, I understand where you're at, and we're here to help. This is a part of our purpose, is to serve and to help other people to dig themselves back out of that hole and to regain, their purpose and fill up their streams, I guess, if you will, and send them down that path with a bunch of other people that want to help them along the way. So if you guys if somebody ever watches this, want to talk to us, like, I'm always happy to chat, and, don't hesitate to reach out. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Yes, and stay balanced.